vocation story really began in about the 7th or 8th grade. We had a visit by an Oblate vocation director, Father Mooney, and he talked to our class about vocation to priesthood, primarily to priesthood in general. And as he was talking, I guess in my own process at that time, I was thinking of maybe I would like to be a doctor or something that would be able to, a profession or a vocation that would help people. Then when he talked to us about the priesthood, and he really talked about it in a very exciting way and how to share the message of Jesus with people, and thought, well, you know, if I want to help people, that sounds like a good direction to go. So I decided I would go to St. Henry's High School Seminary in Belleville. And so it came time to go, and I got cold feet. I didn't go. And so then the following year, I met Father Mooney at what was called the World Mission Exhibit in St. Louis. And he said, I stopped by the booth for the Oblates, and he said, we were expecting you at St. Henry's, and you didn't come. And I said, well, I changed my mind. And he said, well, if you change your mind again, come and see me. So by the end of that year, by that time I was a freshman in high school, and I told my parents I would like to go to the high school seminary. So my parents and I went to see Father Mooney at his office, and he said, then it came to the question of, who do you want to study for? Do you want to be a diocesan priest, or do you want to be an oblate? At that time, we had diocesan students there as well as oblates, so they were required to ask which one you wanted to study for. I didn't know. I didn't know the difference. And so I looked to my mother. My mother was a convert. She didn't know what the difference was. My mother looked to my father. My father was a lifelong Catholic. He didn't know what the difference was. So my father looked back to my mother. I looked to my mother. My mother looked at Father Mooney, and she said, oh, whatever you are, Father. And Father was an oblate. So that's how I became an oblate. Well, obviously, the story doesn't end there. During the course of high school, that was always in the back of my mind as to, do I really want to be an oblate, or do I want to be a diocesan priest? And then as the year went on, as the years of high school went on, I could see that the oblates, because we had about 8 oblates who were teaching on the faculty at that time, and I could see them. They gathered in prayer in their little chapel next to the main chapel. I could see them, I could hear them saying the breviary together. They would come out afterwards, and they would be laughing, talking, and they seemed to be having fun. And then also we had a lot of missionaries who visited us from the Philippines and from Africa. We had Bishop Hurley, who was not bishop at that time, but he came and talked to us about the apartheid in South Africa. And so as I heard all of these things, the things that really appealed to me were the community, that they did not live by themselves in a rectory, as many diocesan priests do. They lived in community. That appealed to me. Then also the mission thrust sounded very exciting. So I thought, yeah, well, that's really what I want to do. It confirmed my mother's decision that I would be an oblate. So it confirmed that, yeah, this is what I want to do. Went to the novitiate after a year of college, and novitiate was fine. I mean, it was a wonderful year. I enjoyed the novitiate, quiet year, prayerful year. At the end of the year came time to make first vows, and I made first vows, but I was beginning to ask the hard questions. What is this really all about? You know, what is faith really all about? I was beginning to ask the tough questions. That was a fine time to do it after I was making first vows. So I went to our major seminary in Pine Hills, Mississippi, and we were only there, our class was only there about 3 weeks, and the superior called me and my classmate into his office, and he said, well, we got word from the provincial, and the provincial said, now mind you, this was in September, the provincial said that you and your classmate, the two of you are to go to Rome to do your studies. And I was shocked because I really was not expecting this. I was expecting to be at our major seminary through the course of philosophy and theology. So then, at the end of informing us that we were to leave to go to Rome, he said, if you have any questions about this, we can talk about it. My classmate was happy. He thought it was a great thing. I was not real happy about this. So I stayed behind and I gave him 3 reasons why I should not go to Rome. I said, first of all, I just made first vows, and well, yes, this is what I want to do, but I'm not absolutely sure. And if I quit, it looks pretty tacky. You go to Rome and then quit and come back. And I said, furthermore, how would I get back? Do I have to swim back or what? The second reason, I said, there are other more intelligent people in this class. One of them was Francis George, who became cardinal in Chicago. I said, send Francis. No, you know, Francis had polio when he was a young kid, and he would have difficulty on all those stairs and all those cobblestones. I thought to myself, but it might do him good. I didn't say that. My third reason was really the real reason. I knew that in going to Rome, I would be there for 7 years, because you were not allowed to come back in those days. And my mother had part of a lung removed, and we weren't sure she would survive. And I knew that even if you went to Rome, even if a parent died, you were not allowed to come back for the funeral. Well, fortunately, my mother lived to be 85. So anyway, the superior listened, and he said, those aren't good enough reasons, you'll go anyway. So packed up things, went home, came back to Belleville, then met with the family to tell them goodbye for the next 7 years. And in the process, they knew I was not happy about this. And my dad, who was never one to lecture, but my dad, he and I were alone somewhere, and he said, we know you're not happy about this decision and the assignment to go to Rome. If you quit, we're fine, we're happy with that. If you stay, we're happy with that. The important thing is you have to be happy with what you're doing. But, he added the little but, you have to realize there are struggles in every vocation. So in other words, no matter what you do, don't expect to be on easy street. So those were good words of wisdom from my dad. Anyway, packed up, left for Rome. My classmate and I were sent by ship. It was the cheaper way to send people. We were in the bottom of that ship, I think 3 levels below water level. And my classmate was seasick before we reached the Statue of Liberty as we were cruising out of the harbor. So it was a 10-day cruise, and so 5 days crossing the Atlantic, the other days visiting different ports, Spain, Portugal, and Africa. Finally arrived in Rome, and of course I was enjoying the cruise. I thought maybe this will never end and I won't have to go to Rome. Anyway, so finally we arrived in Naples, and the Oblate met us to take us to our new home in Rome. Now also as a parenthesis, during the crossing on October 9th, 1958, Pius XII died. So we arrived in Rome, and Pope Pius XII was being buried on October 14th, the day we arrived in Rome. Now I was grateful that he died for one selfish reason. We were supposed to begin classes on October 15th. Now mind you, we arrived on October 14th in a new country, new languages. We were supposed to begin class on October 14th. Thanks to Pope Pius XII, because of his death, everything was delayed for a couple of weeks. So I was so grateful I had a couple of weeks to adjust. We arrived at our new home. Our new home was about a block from the Colosseum. I was in a dormitory with 7 other people. There were 8 of us, rather stark living conditions. And I described our living conditions to friends and family as being in worse shape than the Colosseum. Now, if you've seen pictures of the Colosseum, if you've been there, it's not very well equipped. Anyway, the language of the house, official language of the house, everything was in French. I didn't know any French because we were founded in France. We were expected to learn French, and then also almost all of our staff members were French speaking. The notices on the board, the announcements, everything was in French. I studied German in high school, no French. In the streets, of course, it was Italian. I didn't know any Italian. And in the universities, everything was taught in Latin, and then Latin spoken by a Frenchman, a German, Spaniard, so they all had different accents to the Latin. It was a terrible experience. To my spiritual director, I told him I took vows for a year, but at the end of the year, I'm out of here. And I'm sure he got tired of my whining during the year. It's a wonder he didn't tell me, don't wait until the end of the year, just go. He didn't, fortunately. By the end of the year, I realized that maybe I could try this for one more year. Also, I had received a letter from my mother, and she said in the letter, and we realize you're homesick. I'm sure I was writing letters home like, well, I only have 6 more years, 5 months, 3 weeks. I was probably doing a countdown. And so she wrote back and said, now, we know that you're homesick. We would love to see you, but just remember you're seeing some wonderful things in Rome, and you're meeting people from all over the world. We were 106 seminarians from all over the world. You're meeting people from all over the world. And she said, you may never have that chance again. And I thought to myself, I hope not. At any rate, and she used the expression, don't wish your life away. In other words, appreciate the things that you have. So made it past the 2nd year, and then by that time I began to appreciate Rome. The election of John the 23rd happened, and then he called the Vatican Council. So there were a lot of exciting things that were happening during that time, and so it was really historically a great moment to be in Rome. So that was really my crisis point in my vocation. That was the most difficult time in my life when things really did not make any sense, and I really didn't know if that's what I should be doing. But it was through that course of time that the decision became clearer, and then of course I was ordained in 1964, and this year is the 60th anniversary of First Vows. So it's been a good experience. I would say after that point of struggle, I really have not had any hesitation or any doubt about, was this the right thing to do? I've had some wonderful experiences, and I'm grateful to certainly my parents and family, but to the Oblates and to all who were part of that journey.